Quiz time! Select one person to pardon. Option A, an innocent man sitting on death row. Option B, a serial drunk driver who just permanently disabled a 5-year-old child. If you chose choice B, you would be the current governor of Missouri, Mike Parson. And boy, did he choose a winner. Britt Reed is the son of legendary football coach Andy Reid, and he has quite the criminal history. Pointing a gun at a motorist, drunk driving and drug possession while on probation for the gun incident, punching the window of an off-duty police officer during road rage, and most recently, while drunk and on amphetamines, smashing into 2 vehicles on the shoulder at 84 miles per hour outside the Chiefs' training facility. Inside one of those vehicles was 5-year-old Ariel, who suffered permanent brain damage and was in a coma for 11 days after getting crushed in the back seat. Anyways, I digress, because the subject of this video is Marcellus Williams. Here are the facts. On August 11th, 1998, at 8 p.m. in a gated community within the suburbs of St. Louis, Dr. Dan Pikus came home from work and walked in on a hellish scene. Bloody shoe and fingerprints were all over the ransacked kitchen. On the floor in the hallway was his wife, Felicia, with a butcher's knife from the kitchen still in her neck, after having been stabbed 43 times. Pubic hair was recovered next to her body. During the autopsy, the fact the knife was still in her neck stuck out to the St. Louis medical examiner. Weeks earlier, another woman had been stabbed 20 times just a couple of miles away, and the knife left in the victim's body there also came from their own kitchen. Not only were the methods very similar, but both women were petite, with brown hair, and of similar ages. Despite the medical examiner stating that they thought the killings were connected, nothing ever came of that lead. In the Pikus household, the kitchen, closets, and drawers throughout the house were ransacked, but not much of value was taken. Felicia's wedding ring and $400 cash in a closet were still there. Only a few items were missing, including the husband's wallet and Apple laptop. On the date of the murder, a neighbor and postman interacted with Felicia, and every neighbor the police interviewed did not see or hear anything suspicious at all throughout the entire day. She did not have a job at the time of her death, but was a former crime reporter for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. She had last worked there 6 years prior. The St. Louis Dispatch covered the story extensively, but the case was completely cold for almost 10 months until Dan Pikus put up a $10,000 reward for any information. That is when Marcellus Williams' former cellmate, Henry Cole, came forward and told police that Williams admitted to killing Felicia while they were in jail together. Cole had a long rap sheet dating back to the 1960s, which included things like robbery and weapons possession. He also was a regular user of crack and heroin. Before providing any information, he asked the police if he could receive any of the $10,000 in reward money up front. Henry Cole then said his piece, and 3 months later, Marcellus's ex-girlfriend, Laura Asaro, was arrested for prostitution. During her arrest, she claimed to have information pertaining to the murder of the woman in U City. Police questioned her for 2 hours to no avail and stated she was just trying to get out of the arrest. 4 days later, they tried a different tactic. Detectives informed her that the charges would be dropped if she cooperated, and prosecutors wrote she was not receptive, so detectives then told her that the husband had posted a $10,000 reward in the case involving the death of his wife, and she would be eligible for some or all of the money if she helped out. Asaro then told police the following. She was living in Williams' car with him at the time of the murder. On the day the victim was killed, Williams left her at her mother's house and returned with blood on his clothes and scratches on his neck. He then threw the clothing down a sewer and promptly went to a neighbor to trade Pikus' laptop for crack. Asaro at one point told police she saw the laptop in Williams' car, but her story on the computer and when it was sold changed several times. She also said the day after Williams' return covered in blood, she found the victim's purse in the trunk of the car and thought he was cheating on her. According to prosecutors, when confronted about it, Asaro said Williams told her it belonged to, quote, a journalist at the Post-Dispatch whom he had just killed, Emphasis on a journalist at the Post-Dispatch whom he had just killed. What are the odds that Marcellus read that paper and even knew who the victim was if he had killed her? Some details later in the video will further explain the opinion I'm about to give. No offense to Marcellus, but he doesn't strike me as an avid reader of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch who would recall the name of this former reporter, considering she hadn't worked there for 6 years. This is especially the case because the day following the murder would have been before the victim was labeled by the media as the lady from that newspaper who was brutally murdered. Since this happened in 1998, it isn't like Marcellus could have simply Googled her name once he found the ID in her purse to discover she used to be a reporter. Anyways, Cole and Asaro were the backbone of the prosecution's case at Williams' trial in the summer of 2001. The state painted a harrowing picture of the attack on Felicia and cast Williams as the ruthless killer. However, there was no physical evidence to back up the informant's claims. Asaro claimed that Williams had scratches on his neck the day of the murder, yet no foreign DNA was recovered from under Felicia's fingernails. Cole said Williams told him his clothes were bloody and that he'd stolen a shirt to cover the stains when he left the house, yet no clothes were missing from the home. Bloody shoe prints found at the scene were a different size than Williams's feet. Fingerprints lifted by investigators were deemed unusable by the state and then destroyed before the defense had a chance to analyze them. Additionally, despite the first admission of DNA evidence in court in 1986, the murder weapon was not tested for DNA during this 2001 trial. In fact, the circuit court judge did not allow it to be tested at all. Why? 'Cause fuck you! Furthermore, there was another piece of evidence that emerged during the trial, which was not allowed to be shared with the jury because the statement was unrelated to the question asked by the prosecution. That statement came from the man who purchased the laptop from Marcellus. He said that Marcellus told him that he was selling the laptop on behalf of Laura. Furthermore, a cousin of Williams testified that in August of 1998, he saw Asaro get off a bus near his grandfather's home carrying a laptop and a purse. But what the jury heard from Laura was that Marcellus sold the laptop to a neighbor in exchange for some crack. The neighbor disputed the crack allegations and claimed he paid cash for it. Lastly, the pubic hair found near the body of the deceased was tested, but it did not belong to Williams. Despite these inconsistencies, Marcellus was sentenced to death, convicted by a jury of 1 black and 11 white people. His appeal process has been ongoing since. On August 22, 2017, the day he was scheduled to be executed, the Midwest Innocence Project successfully lobbied then-Governor Greitens to halt the execution until a board of inquiry could investigate the case. Greitens issued an executive order stating that the 5-member board would assess the credibility and weight of all evidence, be granted subpoena power, and issue a final report and recommendation. The board consisted of 5 retired judges, but their work came to a screeching halt after the next governor, Mike Parson, issued his own executive order on June 29, 2023, rescinding the previous one. The Innocence Project then filed a civil lawsuit claiming that Parson had violated existing law by dissolving the board before it had fulfilled its statutory duty to provide a report and recommendation in the Williams case. Missouri's Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, sought to have the lawsuit dismissed, but a circuit court judge concluded it should proceed. The Attorney General then appealed to the Missouri Supreme Court, which ruled in his favor, and the board was officially dissolved. His execution date was reinstated, but a lot more happened during the appeals process that needs to be discussed. The original prosecuting attorney was accused of striking black jury candidates unfairly, and the facts surrounding at least one of these people is quite suspicious. Candidate number 64 was removed from the pool, according to the prosecutor's own words under oath, because he was a postal worker, had earrings and clothing that indicated he was liberal, had the same glasses, and a similar demeanor to Marcellus. I'm sure the fact that number 64 was also black is just a coincidence. The families of Cole and Asaro also provided statements under oath that the two were known for providing false information to police for their own benefit. The most recent prosecuting attorney for the case, Wesley Bell, admitted in written statements that Cole and Assaro's statements to police were inconsistent and at times contradicted the actual evidence. In a 2020 affidavit, the neighbor who purchased the laptop reiterated that Williams told him he had gotten it from Assaro. Additionally, Mr. Bell revealed that the original prosecution team mishandled the murder weapon by not using gloves and got their own DNA all over it. Since it was contaminated, it could no longer be used as exculpatory evidence. With all of this brought up during the appeal process, the new prosecutor filed a motion to change Marcellus's death sentence to one of life imprisonment since he still had not technically been proven innocent. A circuit court judge signed off on this motion, but that is when Governor Parson and his attorney general got involved to overturn everything. At this point, even Felicia's own family did not want him killed, but rather to serve life in prison. Having said everything I have thus far, I may have hid a little something from you. Up to this point, I have certainly presented things biased in favor of Marcellus Williams. Despite any claims from a neighbor that Williams was selling the laptop on behalf of Assaro, the only person in factual possession of the laptop was Marcellus. Additionally, police found a ruler and calculator that belonged to Felicia, as identified by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch markings on them, in Marcellus's vehicle. Marcellus was also already serving a 20-year sentence for robbing a donut shop when he was charged for the University City killing. With a history of violent tendencies, is it a stretch to believe that he was capable of Felicia's murder? While there is no evidence that can place him at the scene of the crime itself, it is very unlikely he would have her laptop, calculator, and ruler had he not killed her and stolen her purse afterward. Secondly, the original prosecutors testified that Assaro provided them with certain details about the crime that were not public. However, the existence of some doubt is exactly why he should be serving life in prison as opposed to being executed. And executed he was on September 24th, 2024. Thank your local Kansas City Chief season ticket holder.